strong American involvement. Europe, of course, also stands ready to support Ukraine in various ways, supporting its military. And we don't want to preempt any sort of discussions that are currently underway, but we do share the same objective of building this lasting peace.
I just want to tell you a little story. So we were at the Eiffel Tower having dinner with your wonderful wife and with my wonderful wife, and we came out and he started speaking the French deal. And we didn't have an interpreter, and he was going on and on and on, and I was just nodding, yes, yes, yes. And he really sold me out, because I got back the next day and I read the papers. I said, that's not what we said. He's a smart customer, I will tell you. Sure.
How would you
That was exactly what we were doing.
Mr. President, you called Zelensky a dictator. Would you use the same words regarding Putin?
I don't use those words lightly. I think that we're going to see how it all works out. Let's see what happens. I think we have a chance of a really good settlement between various countries. And, you know, you're talking about Europe, and you're talking about Ukraine as part of that whole situation. The other side has a lot of support also. So let's see how it all works out. It might work out. Look, you can never make up lives. The one thing you can make up the money, but you can't make up the lives. A lot of lives lost. I think probably a lot more lives than people are talking about. It's been a rough war, but I think we're close to getting it solved.
Question about Doge, sir. Do you think that Doge could benefit from more streamlined communications? There was that email telling employees to give 5 things that they've done last week. Agency heads then told people to ignore it, but
You're
Elon
talking
Musk.
about the last email that was sent, where he wanted to know what you did this week. You know why he wanted that, by the way? I thought it was great. Because we have people that don't show up to work and nobody even knows if they work for the government. So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, because a lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist. They're trying to find, that's how badly various parts of our government were run by, and especially by this last group. So what they're doing is they're trying to find out who's working for the government. Are we paying other people that aren't working? And you know, where's all that? Where's the money gone? We have found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud so far, and we've just started. We're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there, because maybe somebody stole the gold. Tons of gold.
Some of the agencies.
So I think it was actually. There was a lot of genius in sending it. We're trying to find out if people are working. And so we're sending a letter to people, please tell us what you did last week. If people don't respond, it's very possible that there is no such person or they're not working.
Some of the agency heads instructed their employees not to respond because they were waiting on further guidance, but Elon Musk's tweet said a failure to respond would be taken as a resignation, so there's been a disconnect in communications.
Yeah.
Are you concerned at all about that?
No. That was done in a friendly manner. Only things such as perhaps Marco at State Department, where they have very confidential things, or the FBI, where they're working on confidential things. And they don't mean that in any way combatively with Elon. They're just saying there are some people that you don't want to really have them tell you what they're working on last week. But other than that, I think everyone thought it was a pretty ingenious idea. We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said, if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
And that holds, that stands.
And you're not getting paid anymore, too. So, you know, we're doing a real job. And we just had a poll come out, I guess the Harvard poll, saying that it's massively popular what we're doing. So.
Mr. President, do you still believe in NATO, in the alliance between Europe and America in NATO? Are you going to go to the summit in June?
Very much involved in this. When I first got elected at the very beginning, first term, I got hundreds of billions of dollars put into NATO. NATO had no money because they hadn't paid for years. And I said, look, if you don't pay, we're not going to be a part of NATO, we're not going to protect, we're not going to do what we're supposed to do. And we took in hundreds of billions of dollars into NATO. No, NATO is a good thing if it's done properly and if it's used properly.
Mr. President, in these days you speak a lot about tariff in Canada, in Mexico, and in Europe. I want to know what is your idea about Italy, if you want to make the same thing in Italy.
About what? Can you talk up a little louder?
in these days.
Now louder, can you talk a little louder? You have a beautiful voice, but you're not.
In these days, you speak.
Where are you
about
from?
Italy.
From Italy. Oh, I love Italy. Go ahead.
I want to know if you have the same idea with Italy about tariffs.
Well, look, I love Italy, and Italy is a very important nation. We have a wonderful woman as your leader, and she was on the conversation today, one that we had, the G7. And no, I think Italy is doing very well. I think Italy's got very strong leadership with Georgia.
Monsieur le Président, qu'est-ce que vous répondez au président Trump qui a dit que les Français et les Britanniques n'avaient pas...
Any other questions over here? Yes, ma'am.
Can you clarify what you meant in your truth today on the major economic development transactions between the U.S. and Russia? In more detail?
With respect to what, Russia?
In solving a peace deal, you said there will be major economic development transactions which will take place between the United States and Russia.
Yeah, we're trying to do some economic development deals. They have a lot of things that we want, and we'll see. I mean, I don't know if that will come to fruition, but we'd love to be able to do that if we could. You know, they have massive rare earth. It's a very large, it's actually the largest in terms of land. It's by far the largest country. And they have very valuable things that we could use, and we have things that they could use, and it would be very good if we could do that. I think it would be a very good thing for world peace and lasting peace. Well, I mean, our first, by far, our first thing that we want to do, the first element of the overall transaction is ending the war. But if, just as we're doing with Ukraine, if we could do some economic development in terms of Russia and getting things that we want, something like that would be possible, yes.
Can you explain the rationale, sir, in the U.S.?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Can you explain the rationale in having the U.S. vote against the UN resolutions that Ukraine proposed and also the U.S. proposed?
I would rather not explain it now, but it's sort of self-evident, I think.
Mr. President, first talked about increasing the tariffs on products from the European Union. Is that still something you want to do today?
Well, it's not increasing, it's reciprocal. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them. So it's not a question of increasing. If they charge us 20%, we charge them 20%. If they charge us 30 or 40%, then we do that too. So that would be on European Union, but that really would be with respect to everybody. It's reciprocity. So reciprocal. Whatever they charge us, we charge them. Nobody has a problem. Even you, I see you don't have a problem anymore, right?
Mr. President, are you thinking of going to Moscow soon, maybe in May for the 9th of May for the
I
anniversary?
mean, not soon, but I would be certainly, if this all gets settled out, which I think it will, sure, I would go there.
On the 9th of
And
May?
you'd come here too.
On the 9th of May for on the Red Square?
I don't know, the 9th of May, no, I don't, I think that's pretty soon. But no, at the appropriate time, I would go to Moscow.
Monsieur le Président, est-ce que l'envoi de troupes françaises
I
ou
think we're
européennes est
working it
envisagé en
soon.
Ukraine?
How soon?
Within weeks,
Weeks?
yeah. I
What
think so,
price for
right?
Ukraine?
Don't you think so? I'd like to have you, I think we could end it within weeks, if we're smart. If we're not smart, it'll keep going and we'll keep losing young, beautiful people that shouldn't be dying. And we don't want that. And remember what I said, this could escalate into a third world war. And we don't want that either.
Mr. President, your envoy Steve Witkoff suggested a temporary ceasefire in the conflict, but the Russian government has denied that out of hand. Do you worry that they're not feeling in good faith?
No, I think they, at some point, will agree to that. I think they probably wanted to. And I think once you have a ceasefire, it's going to end, because they're not going from a ceasefire back to war. I think people have had their full. I'm just glad I was able to help, because there was no communication with Russia until I came along. Biden didn't communicate. He couldn't communicate with his own child. So Biden didn't communicate. He couldn't. It was terrible. He hadn't spoken to Putin in 3 years. You're trying to end a war. People are being killed. Every week, thousands of people are being killed. Soldiers, in this case, mostly. Also towns, you know, as missiles go in and back and forth. No, it's a shame. This should have never happened. This is a very sad, this is going to go down in the history books. This is a very sad moment, because that should have been stopped. That should have never started. And if it did start, it should have stopped the first week, not 3 years later. Okay?
Je vais répondre if you allow me,
From
because I
Macron.
have juste, je pense que plusieurs questions de vous et de votre collègue qui ont été posées en français et qui rejoignent les questions posées par les collègues américains. D'abord, cette discussion est utile et construire la paix est une nécessité. La deuxième chose, c'est qu'il y a aujourd'hui une capacité de dissuasion qui est restaurée et que c'est ce que veut dire le président Trump quand il dit qu'il n'y aura plus de problème. Je pense que la force du réengagement américain aujourd'hui, c'est en quelque sorte l'incertitude aussi pour le président Poutine. Et donc il y a une capacité de dissuasion qui est là, qui permet de sceller d'abord sans doute une trêve, la capacité à vérifier que cette trêve est respectée, et ensuite un accord de paix qui permettra de reconstruire l'Ukraine, mais de lui apporter aussi les garanties de sécurité. Dans le cadre de ces garanties de sécurité, nous pensons que nous avons notre rôle à jouer. Et donc, on verra à ce moment-là de la discussion, je ne veux pas la préempter, ce qui est nécessaire pour que l'Ukraine puisse rester un pays souverain. Et d'ailleurs, dans les discussions entre l'Ukraine et les États-Unis d'Amérique, il y a cette question d'une souveraineté ukrainienne qui est respectée. Et donc, nous, ce que nous avons préparé en particulier avec nos partenaires britanniques, dans le cadre d'un travail très étroit qu'on a mené ces dernières semaines, et partagé avec tous les pays européens et alliés qui sont prêts à s'y joindre, c'est l'idée de dire on est prêt à apporter ces garanties de sécurité. Les conditions, elles doivent en être définies.
Par l'envoi de troupes.
Elles doivent être définies par l'accord. Ça peut aller jusqu'à l'envoi, comme l'a dit le président, de troupes qui iront observer que la paix est bien respectée, qui iront se positionner, pas sur la ligne de front, pas pour justement, en quelque sorte, être dans le conflit, mais marquer une présence comme une garantie. Il y a d'autres moyens de soutenir qui peuvent être des soutiens accrus et capacitaires à l'armée, des structures nouvelles. Et je pense aussi que l'accord qui est discuté, le président l'a dit, la crédibilité américaine qui est mise dans ce moment, c'est aussi montrer que chacun est dans son rôle, mais que nous avons une unité, Européens et Américains, et donc avec une forme de garantie que les Américains prennent par la discussion sur les minerais critiques qui sont en train de finaliser.
La guerre peut
For-
s'arrêter dans
for
plusieurs
Macron,
semaines.
By the way, that is the
Je pense
most
que
that is the most beautiful language. I have no idea what he's saying, but that is the
She will
most
translate.
elegant, beautiful language. Go ahead, please.
This is a question that was asked by several. What we need to do is make sure that we are building peace. We have
Can you
deterrence
speak up,
capabilities.
please?
We have deterrence capabilities that have been restored. As President Trump said, there won't be any more problems. We've seen the U.S. re-engagement and the message that that sends to Mr. Putin. We have deterrence, which will allow a truce to take place, verification of that truce, and then a peace agreement can be put in place so that we can start rebuilding Ukraine with security guarantees. And we have a role to play in that. Again, I'm not preempting any discussions, but we've spoken about Ukraine's sovereignty, and that has been a subject of discussion between the U.S. and Ukraine. We have also been working closely with our British partners this week. We've shared this information with other European countries, and we are ready and willing to provide those security guarantees, which could perhaps include troops, but they would be there to maintain peace. They would not be along the front lines. They would not be part of any conflict. They would be there to ensure that the peace is respected. Our assistance may include other capacity building, perhaps for the military. We see U.S. credibility here. We each have our role to play, but it will be done in a united fashion.
Mr.
What are the frozen
President, do you
Russian
think that
assets
Ukraine
under-
should give up a part of its territory?
Well, we're going to see. It's a negotiation that's just starting, and they've been fighting, and there's been a lot of land that's been taken. So we'll have to see how that works out. That's part of the negotiation. I will say there was great unity in that room today. We were via Skype or whatever, but it was great, tremendous unity today in that room with the other countries.
Ukraine wants
Is France
some
going
of
to-
the territories back. Can they take it back? What they lost in the past years?
That's not an easy thing to do, is it?
Yeah.
Right? It's not an easy. Just asking whether or not you can take back the land that they lost. And I say that, yeah, perhaps some of it, yeah, I hope so. But that's not an easy thing to do.
But not
For
everything.
Macron on the frozen
It's
Russian
going to be
assets.
something we're talking about.
Will you
For
convince
Macron
Vladimir
and the
Putin to
President-
accept the European troops as peacekeeper, would you think?
Yeah, he will accept that.
He will accept
I've
it?
asked him that question.
You talked to him?
I've asked him that question.
Is
Said
France
yes?
going to lift the block on the
Because
300
he's
billion?
not, look, if we do this deal, he's not looking for more war. He doesn't mind, but I've specifically asked him that question. He has no problem with it.
Is France going to lift the block on the $300 billion in frozen Russian assets in Belgium? France has opposed unfreezing it to pay Ukraine and compensate the U.S. for its support. Is France going to lift its opposition to that?
This is, we speak about frozen assets. We already used them to back precisely the loans negotiated at the G7. And it's part of the sanctions, so it will depend on the follow-up of the discussions. But clearly, we respect international law. It's just frozen assets now. You can take the proceeds of the frozen assets, but you cannot take the assets themselves because it's not respecting international law, and we want to respect international law.
How is one different than the other? You can take the proceeds from it, how can you not take
Because
the
it's
assets?
very different. You keep the assets, you take the proceeds because they are paralyzed in a certain way. You take the proceeds during the wartime, but you keep the assets, and it's part of the negotiation at the end of the war. Because, this war costed all of us a lot of money. And this is the responsibility of Russia, because the aggressor is Russia.
Should the U.S. be compensated?
So at the end of the day, this frozen asset should be part of the negotiation. All in all.
Will France support the U.S. being compensated?
I support the idea to have Ukraine first being compensated, because they are the one to have lose a lot of their fellow citizens and being destroyed by these attacks. Second, all of those who paid for could be compensated, but not by Ukraine, by Russia, because they were the one to aggress.
Again, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money, to be clear.
Yeah.
We have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan, because this is not our belonging. So they are frozen. If at the end of the day, in the negotiation we will have with Russia, they're ready to give it to us, super. It will be loan at the end of the day, and Russia would have paid for that.
If you
This is my
believe
wish.
that, it's okay with me.
Mr. President,
They get their money back, we don't, and now we do. But, that's
We will
only
fight
fair.
both.
Mr. President, do you think Russia should be the one that pays everybody back? Are they the aggressors?
Well, we're negotiating everything, and everything's on the table, and we'll see if we can get some land back, and we'll see about a lot of different things. And we're going to be making a little speech and say a few words. In a little while, we're going to have another meeting, a luncheon meeting, and we'll see you in about 2 hours. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Fred.
Let's go.
Moving out, Cameron.